All right. So we are recording. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Regan. I'm the Midwest Account Manager for the NEC SL product, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time to attend this morning's little shindig, where we're going to talk about using the SL2100 to compete in a more tech-savvy environment. And when I talk about tech-savvy, what I'm really talking about is, how to use some of the features of the SL2100 to compete against hosted. All right? So that's what we're going to talk about today, and there's just our mission statement for NEC, so we'll pull right through that. Before we dive into the meat and potatoes of what we're going to talk about today, I just want to remind you about the SL2100. The SL2100 is a value leader. It's a value leader in our product mix. It supports all technologies, so it will support IP, TDM, and analog. So it's an IP solution. It's a digital key telephone system that will support analog trunks and analog devices as well. It does have a 5-year warranty. It is the S of the SMB market size, and we talk about that more so as a TDM product or as a digital key telephone system. As a digital key telephone system, it really fits in the 24 station and under market. You will see in the next couple of slides that when we start talking about voice over IP, the system really lends itself not only to the small size, but also to the mid-sized business as well. All right? And this is the product that we sell through general distribution. All right. As I mentioned, in the product positioning, it's a hybrid voice over IP TDM solution. It is scalable to 112 voice over IP stations in a single chassis, which is an important distinction. When you start talking about this as a TDM solution, it's 24 stations per cabinet, so 24 digital stations per cabinet. All right. So if you go beyond 24 digital stations, you have to add another cabinet. You go beyond 48 digital stations, you have to add a third cabinet. All right. You can do all voice over IP on an SL2100 in a single cabinet or a single chassis. Right. We support SIP trunks, PRI, T1, as well as T1, as well as POTS lines. And we have the UC applications available as you need them. All right. So we have the UC applications, and you can add them as you need them. So, and those include our in-UC desktop integration, email notification, mobile extension, and the new ST500 mobile app, all of which we'll talk about in more depth later on in the presentation. All right. As I keep mentioning, there's more voice over IP channels available on the SL2100. You can go up to 128 voice over IP resources. All right. At 128 voice over IP resources, that means you can run up to 112 voice over IP stations and up to 64 SIP trunks. All right. Some of you may be thinking, well, 112 plus 64, that's 176 resources. Well, our resources are shared resources. All right. So you can certainly have more devices and more SIP trunks than you have available resources. All right. So even if you build a system that has 64 SIP trunks, kind of unrealistic, but that's a capability in the system, you can still run 112 voice over IP sets because those are shared resources. And with 64 SIP trunks, the most, at most, you will have 64 voice over IP handsets engaged at any one given time. All right. So and then those resources are dynamically allocated as they're needed. So that's why you can have a greater pure voice over IP capability with this system all done in a single chassis, right? So that you could lower your monthly bills, in some cases up to 70%. You're certainly reducing overhead with a single box connection. Gives you some greater flexibility with virtual numbers and things like that. All right? So those are just kind of the reminders of what the SL2100 is kind of capable of out of the box. And the last point I want to make before we dive into what we're kind of all here for is one of the biggest misconceptions about voice over IP is that it's an either-or proposition. You are either running a TDM solution or you're running a voice over IP solution. All right? And it's not. With the SL2100, it's not. You can certainly have SIP trunks coming into a system and running all digital stations. You can certainly have all digital stations coming into the system and be running POTS lines. All right? So we are a true hybrid solution. So that it is not, now there's advantages to running all voice over IP, but it is not essential when you're running to run all voice over IP. All right, so that's one point I wanted to make. Now we want to talk about owning your market with utilizing some of these advanced features of the SL2100. And what we're going to talk about now in the next 40-45 minutes is voice over IP. Are you in? We're going to talk briefly about the history of hosted, because everybody gets all squirrely about how hosted is, this hosted stuff is taking over the world. And this is, the hosted solution is actually not a new concept. We're going to talk briefly about who the decision maker, because that has changed. We're going to talk a lot about the 4 value propositions that we see in tech-savvy or more hosted environments. We're going to talk about the allure of free goods and the lease advantage. All right? So that's kind of an outline of what we're going to cover in the next 40-45 minutes. All right? Voice over IP, are you in? Do you currently offer voice over IP? Now, when we talk about offering voice over IP, that's a broad spectrum. I mean, I do another webinar. In fact, I'm doing it on Thursday where I talk about voice over IP, more specifics of voice over IP on the SL2100. And when somebody comes at you and says, I need a voice over IP solution, well, what do they mean by that? So to kind of narrow it down, do you currently offer voice over IP? Are you offering SIP trunks? Are you offering a voice over IP system? Telephony system? Are you offering hosted? Right? Currently, if you do not offer any voice over IP, then the question becomes, do you still plan on being in business in the next 18 months or so? Because by 2020, the phone company's plan is to start phasing out POTS lines. All right? Now, will they ever totally be available to, or totally be able to eliminate POTS lines? No. They, at least I don't think they will be able to, because PRI and POTS lines, PRI and SIP trunks are not necessarily reliable enough to hook an alarm system up to them, right? So, but what I do feel is that POTS lines, starting in 2020 and beyond, POTS lines will be your most expensive way to bring the signal into the DMARC, right? So it's going to become more affordable to do PRI or SIP trunks, right? So you're going to have to become familiar with doing more of those instead of POTS lines. Also, by 2020, full compliance with Kerry's Law is expected. Kerry's Law is basically stipulates that all phone systems need to be compliant with E911. Most phone systems are, including the SL2100. But in order to properly deploy E911, you need to be running SIP trunks or a PRI circuit, because then you need to give exact locations of those DID numbers to the service provider so that when they dial 911, the dispatch knows exactly where they're located in that building. All right. The other thing with Carey's Law, or one of the other specifications with Carey's Law, is that when somebody goes to a phone and dials 911, they don't have to grab a line, hit the button to grab a line if you're using a squared system. They don't have to dial 9 first to grab an outside line. It's the system intuitively knows when they see the digits 911 that there's an emergency, and it clears a path out to make that call. All right? So it's easier to be E911 compliant when you're running SIP trunks in a PRI circuit. All right? What is SIP trunking? If you are not already familiar with it, SIP trunking is just a different way of bringing the service into the DMARC. All right? Now but what they are is they're network trunks. Right? And they use the voice over IP protocol to transmit the signal. Right? SIP trunks have similar features to a PRI without needing to invest in 23 channels. So SIP trunks are great for the small business. The other cool thing about SIP trunks, if you get on board with them now with this 1 or 2 different SIP service providers, you can end up with some reoccurring monthly revenue. Finder's fees, monthly residuals. You need to check with the provider, though, on that. All right? When utilizing CPE, however, it is not necessarily always to deploy voice over IP phones with SIP trunks. That's what KSU does. So that's why you can have on an SL2100, you can have SIP trunks and digital phones. All right? And we'll talk more about this last point a little bit later. If you utilize SIP trunking and leasing, it will help you compete with hosted voice over IP solutions. All right? And now we want to talk about a brief history lesson with regards to hosted. I see this a lot. Every month we have a monthly conference call amongst our account management team. And one of the things, everybody gets kind of all up in arms from an NEC account management perspective about hosted. Hosted this, hosted that, hosted is eating our lunch, and we're talking about hosted as if it is a new concept. Hosted is not a new concept, right? Those of you who have been in the business for a while, like myself, who I think this past October, I think I celebrated 104 years in the telecom industry, or at least it seems like it. We remember Centrex, right? Centrex was a PBX-like service that provided switching at the central office instead of on the customer premise. Right? Typically, the telephone company owns and manages all the communications equipment and software necessary to implement Centrex, right? And then they sold it through a series of resellers where they paid reoccurring monthly revenue, right? So to break it down even a little bit more, Centrex trunks were a lot like POS lines, except they were enhanced. All right, so you were able to transfer calls to a different extensions. You were able to park calls so that another extension can pick it up. So you had limited PBX features. They deployed 2,500 sets. So you were using analog telephones, all right, at the end user's location. At the onset, they were providing some generous reoccurring monthly revenue. So there were spiffs, there were commissions paid. Right? But over time, with Centrex, the reoccurring monthly revenue dwindled and was eventually eliminated. and then the service provider ultimately took control of that customer. So they used their reseller network to build up this customer base, and then at some point, it became more profitable for them to eliminate the resellers and take ownership of that end user. All right. Now, today's hosted solution, you're utilizing SIP trunks. More, yet still limited features when compared to customer premise equipment. They deploy voice over IP phones because they're not using a KSU, so you have to, when doing hosted, you have to use voice over IP telephones. They're paying generous recurring monthly revenues, spiffs, and commissions. Right? All of this starting to sound familiar? Right? But over time, what's going to happen? Remember Centrex. All right? I'm not saying, I'm just saying. We have a history of this. All right? Centrex, the phone company took ultimate ownership, or the service provider took ultimate ownership. What's going to happen with hosted? All right? The new wrinkle, though, with hosted is bandwidth. Bandwidth and network infrastructure. All right? That becomes a key factor. Their network infrastructure, when doing any type of voice over IP, is very important, as well as the available bandwidth on the network. All right? So those are some things to consider when we talk about voice over IP, and things that, I should back up. These are things that don't get discussed nearly enough, especially when some of these some of our competitors, I should say, are in there trying to sell a hosted solution. I know because I get those phone calls afterwards. Somebody put in a hosted solution, they're not happy with it, yada, yada, yada. And typically, most of the problems can be traced back to the network. All right? Now I can move ahead, and I want to talk about who the decision maker is. And this is not a sales 101 conversation. This is just a simple observation that I've made in conversations with resellers. Okay. Back in the old days, 103 years ago when I started, the decision maker or the decision makers, I should say, were the business owner and the office manager. Business owner held the keys to the checkbook. And usually the sales cycle went, and I'm a little oversimplifying, is they went to the office manager and said, hey, how do you like the looks of these phones? It can do this, that, and the other thing. What do you think? Yeah, that's great. Let's go. We like the company. Let's put it in. All right. So that was kind of how it went back in the old days. Now we got the IT manager involved. Okay, the IT manager is becoming more and more involved in the communications aspect of it. They have a tendency to be more IP-centric. They have a tendency to lean towards the more technical type of solutions, i.e. hosted. So it's the IT manager that is kind of now inserting themselves into the communications conversation. And we need to be able to speak with those folks and be able to go through. And that's how a lot of hosted systems are ended up getting sold out there, is you got your data VARs out there saying, hey, we can upgrade your network infrastructure, and when we do that, oh, by the way, we have this phone system that's going to cost you X amount of dollars per month. All right? So be mindful that the decision it's more than just the business owner now. It's the IT guy is involved. All right. Now we're going to talk from this point about the 4 value propositions in communications right now. Okay? And these are value propositions that I've identified, again, in speaking with resellers about this whole, competing with hostage and in a more tech-savvy environment. Okay? So the 4 value propositions are voicemail to email, CTI or computer telephony integration, BYOD, bring your own device, which is typically mobile phone integration or a more so smart device integration. And then the last is low monthly payment, and in some cases that can involve free equipment. All right? So let's take a look at each 4 of these value propositions on an individual basis. First one is email integration. The misconception about email integration is that it is purely a voice over IP feature, and it is not. We have been doing email integration on our phone systems since approximately 2007. We introduced email integration on our systems before we even had voice over IP. So email integration is a network feature as opposed to a voice over IP feature, and there is a difference. All right, so it utilizes the built-in Ethernet port on the system, so the system needs to reside on the network. Again, that does not necessarily mean that it has to be voice over IP. All right, and it's more than notification. A WAV file copy of the message gets sent out. All right, and in that email, with the WAV file copy of the message sent out, the caller ID information from the caller is in the subject line. All right? So it's more than just notification. It's a way to manage your messages through looking at through the subscriber looking at their emails. All right? There is a 60-day free trial of this software built into the system. All right? So it's something that your customers can kick the tires on. All right? And if not, though, the email notification license, and there's the part number there, sells for $300, your cost. So if you get it for one, you get it for all. All right? So it's a one-time license, and then all mailboxes on the system will have the ability to do email integration. All right? This has been the single biggest feature enhancement that we've done in this channel by far. People absolutely love this feature. And it's getting, like I say, more and more into the conversation because of voice over IP and hosted solutions. However, this is not a voice over IP feature. All right, and we've been doing it. We've been doing this feature since about 2007. So email integration is a big part of what we do, and it's to the point now where a lot of customers, or a lot of our resellers, I should say, are just automatically adding the license to the system and say, hey, email integration is built in. All right, so they're building in the $300 cost into the pricing of their system when they're proposing the system, and they're just saying, hey, email integration is built in. You need to be utilizing this feature. Okay. The second value proposition that I talked about is computer telephony integration. All right, and we have that with our web-based NUC client. Right. What the NUC client does is it takes the features from their desk phone and transposes them or translates them onto their desktop computer. All right, so they have phone features. They have simple presence with instant messaging. With an additional license, you can do video and screen sharing. All right. There's the part number for it, and the NUC client is $40 per user. So the license, your cost is $40 per user. All right. And then it takes whatever programmable buttons they have on their phone, and it shows up on their computer. All right. The next slide will show a little bit more detail. So with desktop phone control, you could make or answer calls using your web browser. And again, this is a web-based GUI interface, so it does not require downloading of a software onto their computer. It's web-based, so they just log in via the web and pull up their NUC client. So you can make and answer calls using the browser. You can see status of extensions. You can do call forwarding and do not disturb settings. All your function keys from your phone will show up on the desktop. Okay. Also, you can have buddy lists. Buddy lists, but you can have buddy lists with other NUC users on the system. And what the buddy list does is it kind of replaces the DSS console. So if you have a buddy list with all of the other users, you can see who is on the phone, who's out of the office, that type of, and you can do instant messaging between NUC client users. And then those instant messages can be saved as a notes file on the system. So there's a tremendous amount of flexibility one gets when they start using the web-based NUC client. Now, up until version 1.5 software, you had to use the NUC client in conjunction with the desktop phone. It needed the desktop phone there in order to be used. With version 1.5, we introduced a browser phone for the NUC client. So then that eliminates the need for having a desktop phone. And I'll talk, for those of you attending my version 1.5 webinar later on this afternoon, we'll talk more about the browser phone during that presentation. Okay? And then you do have some collaboration. There's your instant messaging and presence, as well as some video conferencing that will be done. It does require, I think, an additional license for video conferencing. All right, and that's all through the web-based NUC client. All right. The third value proposition that I talked about was bring your own device. All right. Generally, when we talk about bring your own device, that's mobile phone integration. And you will see we have two ways of doing mobile phone integration on the SL2100. All right. First is through a feature called mobile extension. Mobile extension is purely for cellular phones, okay, for integrating cellular phones into the system. All right, and this is the TEM way of integrating cellular phones into the system. And basically what mobile extension is a fancy way of doing off-premise call forwarding. All right, with mobile extension, you can assign an extension number to a mobile phone. All right, so that mobile phone now becomes a single line telephone on the system. So it has the same features of a single line telephone. You can answer all lines, you can make calls off of all lines, but instead of having a programmable button, you have to dial in service codes. Okay, so it is very similar to off-premise call forwarding in the fact that it takes two trunks for this transaction. You have a trunk for the incoming call, and then a trunk for the system to call out to the cell phone, and then it does a trunk-to-trunk conference call. All right, so it's very similar, but where it differs from off-premise call forwarding is the mobile extension license has software in it that gives the mobile extension user more flexibility with how they use the call. So with a simple off-premise call forward, once that call goes to the mobile phone, they can either answer it or just let it ring so it goes back to the system. All right? And then once they're on the call, all they can do is hang up. But with mobile extension, once that call gets to the cellular phone, a mobile extension user can transfer the call back to another extension on the system. They could park the call and then do an intercom call to another extension on the system and say, hey, you need to speak with this person. They're parked in this park orbit. Okay? You can also make outbound calls from your mobile device, and the caller ID that shows up at the far end will be the system caller ID and not the cell phone caller ID. All right? But to do that, it does require some DID programming. So that's why it's recommended that if you're going to utilize mobile extension, that you have at least SIP trunks or a PRI circuit, something so that you can set up DIDs. It can be done with analog trunks, but then it becomes a little more cumbersome to use this feature. All right. Mobile extension, there are 4 mobile extension licenses built into each system. So you have the capability of integrating 4 cellular phones into the system right out of the box. Beyond the first 4, then it's $100 per user, your cost. All right. And again, this is a TDM way of integrating cellular phones in with the system. This is not an app. This is not a smartphone app. All right? The smartphone app is this guy, the ST500. All right? Oh, before I talk about the smartphone app, let me back up. One of the key features or key capabilities of mobile extension is this concept of twinning. So that call goes in, it could be transferred to somebody's office phone, and it could ring their office phone and their mobile device virtually simultaneously. So the twinning feature is part of mobile extension. All right. Again, TDM, this is not an app. The app is our ST500. All right. The ST500 is a smartphone app. It is a free app from the Google Play Store and iTunes. All right, so it'll work on an Android device and it'll work on iOS devices. All right, this is a smart, I should say, not a smartphone app, but a smart device app. So any app or any device that can be Wi-Fi, or has Wi-Fi capability and will process voice features, which is just about any smart device, you can put this app on. So it's not limited to iPhones and Android phones. You could do it on an iPad. You can do it on an iPod Touch. You could do it on a Samsung tablet or any type of Android tablet. All right. And basically what this app is it's a SIP single line telephone. All right, so this would be the utilization of the ST500 would be it's a single line, or I should say, let me back up. It's a voice over IP extension on the system. So every ST500 user would have it would have a voice over IP extension. So it would have an extension number, so that you could transfer calls right to the user with the smartphone app. All right? It does require the same license as U-Mobility, so it does require the third-party SIP station license. Right? It has a standard SIP station feature. So you can park a call, you can transfer a call, again, using your 3-digit service codes. There is a video call feature. So you can do ST500 can call another ST500 and have a choice of a voice or a video call. All right. It is supported on Android 4.3 for voice only, or Android 4.4 and higher for both voice and video. I believe currently Android is at version 9.1. I just left, in terms of cellular phone, I left the Apple world and went to the Android world with the Samsung Galaxy, and I think we're at version 9.1. For iOS, it's supported on version iOS 10 and higher. All right, and the push notifications for iOS will be coming in a future version. Although I thought I read in the manual when I first looked at the ST500 manual for Apple devices, I thought it said the push notifications were there. And basically what push notifications are there for is they will wake up a sleeping device, right, and transfer a call, which is this is why everybody had to scramble and come up with new smartphone apps. When Apple got slapped for their battery problems, they had to create software to take care of their battery problems. And one of the things they did was they didn't allow sleeping devices to be woken up when they were running smartphone apps. So that's why everybody who manufactured a smartphone app had to scramble about a year or so ago, because everybody's smartphone apps stopped working on Apple devices. So this one is supported on iOS 10 or higher. All right. This was initially designed, the ST500 was initially designed to be a Wi-Fi client. All right. So when we actually introduced an earlier version of this, some of you may be familiar with the U-Mobility app. When U-Mobility was introduced on the SL2100, or I'm sorry, the SL1100, it was purely a Wi-Fi app. You know, you can only use it, you were only able to use it internally on a LAN. So basically this was an inexpensive way to put Wi-Fi cordless phones on somebody's network. Along about version 3.5 on the SL1100, we introduced a feature called NAT traversal to a third-party SIP device, which then allowed for the ability to utilize these smartphone users to utilize their cell phone provider's 3 or 4G network to connect back up to the system and make phone calls. Well, fast forward to the SL2100, we still do NAT traversal to a third-party SIP device. So theoretically, yes, you can use the ST500 app outside of the office on your 3 or 4G network to connect back up to the system, soon to be 5G network. Okay. The issue with that is if your end user does not have unlimited data from their cell phone provider, they will be in for quite the surprise when they get their cell phone bill. All right, because this app does eat up a lot of data. All right, so if they're going to use the smartphone app remotely, they need to be sure that they have unlimited data from their cell phone provider. Not pooled data, but unlimited data. And if they don't have unlimited data, they need to be explained that if you're going to use your 3 or 4G network to connect back up to the system, you need to do so sparingly and only in emergencies, because you can run through your data plan really quick using this ST500 app. And that's true for any of these mobile apps, by the way. So they should, if they want to use this remotely, they should have unlimited data from their cell phone provider. All right. Other than that, they can use it remotely by going into somebody and logging on to somebody else's network. You know, so they can go into McDonald's, Starbucks, the 4 or 5 Barnes and Nobles that are left in the world. You know, anybody that has Wi-Fi service, they could log on to their Wi-Fi service and have the ability to make phone calls remotely. All right, so that's not an issue. The issue is when they use their cell phone provider, because they will suck up data time from their cell phone provider when they do this. All right. Again, the free app, it's free download on the Google Play Store and iTunes. Does require the third-party SIP station license, which your cost is $30. All right. The last value proposition that I had was the allure of free equipment, and I put on here an old Russian proverb: free cheese is only found in mousetraps. The example I give with this is, I cover 7 states, and I fly pretty loyally with Southwest Airlines. And if you're familiar with Southwest Airlines advertising, their whole big thing is bags fly free. You can check up to 2 bags, and we won't charge you. Anything beyond 2, you're going to get charged for. Well, because of the travel service we use, I see other airlines' airfares, and Southwest airfares are about $50 to $75 higher now than the other airlines that charge for baggage. So no, your bags are not flying free. We just have it covered in the fare. All right, and it's the same thing with this whole concept of free equipment with a hosted solution. All right, what they're doing is they're bundling. And this is something we used to see quite a bit in the cellular realm. All right, they're using recurring monthly revenue to offset the cost of the hardware. So it gives the ability to offer free goods. As I mentioned, this was a similar strategy used in the cellular market. Hey, if you sign up for 3 years of our cellular plan, we'll give you the latest iPhone for free. Well, much like Southwest Airlines, they built in the cost of that cellular phone into their monthly charge. So it wasn't necessarily free. And a few years ago, the FCC stepped in and said, oh, no, you can't do that anymore with the cellular market. You have to itemize out the cost of the cell phone. So that's why now when you go for your cell phone, and they, instead of it being free, they're rolling it in as kind of a lease on their monthly charge for their service. And it's the same thing with hosted. All right? So that's why you'll see, hey, brand X hosted provider we'll put a device on everybody's desk for $31 a month per user, and that will include service, and you get X amount of long distance time and email integration, this, that, and the other. So depending on the features and the bandwidth requirements, cost could be lower, could also be higher depending on what they use. But the point is, $30.99 times 10 users is $310 a month. That to me sounds a lot like a lease. And that's what it is. It's a lease. But in this case, it's a lease that doesn't necessarily end. All right? So if you want to compete with the low monthly cost of a hosted solution, you guys have leasing available to you through NEC Financial Services. All right, NEC Financial Services is a wholly owned subsidiary of NEC, so it's kind of its own entity. All right, and we have something called NED, NEC Empowering Dealers. You can sign up at the portal, which is ed.neclease.com. You can sign up as a reseller, and then you will have access to our current rates for leasing. You will see all of the promotions that NEC Financial Services is running. and then you will be contacted by a leasing representative to find out, leasing needs. And so this is a whole kind of dealer portal so that you can basically plug in the cost of your deal. And I say deal because NEC Financial Services is not limited to just leasing NEC phone systems. They will lease the entire project for you. So you can plug in the cost of your project and see what it costs, what it would cost for a 36-month lease, a 60-month lease, at both the $1 buyout and the fair market value buyout. So this is available to you, and then you can do a printout like what we see on the screen that includes your customer, your information on there. So this would be a document coming from you, all right? And you can then provide, hey, this is how much it would cost as a cash sale. This is how much it would cost you per month when doing a lease. And at that point, the end user has a choice to decide whether they're doing this as a capital expense or an operating expense. And that's for them and their accountant to determine. Point is you really, in order to compete in today's marketplace, you really should be offering two options, a cash sale option and a lease option. All right? And if you are not already associated with any leasing company, NEC Financial Services is available to you. Even if you are associated with the leasing company, NEC Financial Services is available to you. Again, point is, you should be offering both options to your end users when quoting a system. All right, and there's our contacts. Deborah Jacoby is the director for inside sales. And then Noreen Burns she kind of has taken the lead from an inside sales associate in terms of our channel. So she has a couple of other people that work underneath her, and she works really closely with our resellers for leasing. So there's a couple of contacts for you for NEC Financial Services. All right. One illustration I want to give, and hopefully I'm looking at there's nobody from NEC on here. So this next slide, and I'm just going to populate this slide. I pilfered this slide from the other side of the house, from our direct side, because they have a product that they offer that includes recurring monthly revenue. So basically, we're talking about something similar to a hosted solution. And I want to focus on this concept of recurring monthly revenue. Because even, we'll talk about it in terms of what we offer. And a lot of times people get sucked into the hosted thing because of this recurring monthly revenue. All right, but I want to do some simple math. I want to focus here. Down here, we talk about a 3-year contract with basically the system is a 15-user system with voicemail and some analog trunks on it and some SIP trunks and all that fun stuff. That would basically sell for about $7,000. And if it was sold as a cash sale, your gross profit from that one-time cash sale would be about $3,500. But here we talk about it doing where it's kind of a rental, which is basically what hosted is a lease or a rental. And over the terms, if they do a 3-year contract, the reseller will get $168 a month for the 36 months, which is the term of that contract, which totals up to a grand total of over $6,000 in real profit. All right? But remember, you're getting that in the payment terms of over 36 months. So if I come back here and use it sold as a cash sale for a one-time total gross profit of $3,500 at $168 per month, it would take 21 systems in a month to get close to that $3,500. All right? So the question I have is how many people are selling 31 systems in a month? Or, I'm sorry, 21 systems in a month. So let's take this a step further. You know, nobody is selling just one system a month. Let's say you're selling 4 or 5 systems in a month. Let's take 4 systems in a month, each with a gross profit of about $3,500. That turns out to be $14,000 in gross profit. Now, in order to make up that $14,000 in gross profit at $168, you would have to sell 84 systems in a month. All right? So don't be sucked in. And again, hosted in this term, this concept of recurring monthly revenue is great. It's a nice add-on to what you're doing, but it's hard to depend on that. You have to build up a lot of sales in order to be dependent on the recurring monthly revenue. So, you know, I just wanted to point that out. You know, be careful with this concept of the recurring monthly revenue. All right. Support resources. We have the NEC SL2100.com website. This is a great website, not only for you all, but it's a great resource for your end users. You can send your end users to this website, and they will see different vertical markets. We talk about different applications of the SL2100, some of the benefits for business, usage examples. There's a section of the SL2100 in action, which shows a whole corporate setup and shows some of the different features and how they benefit that particular business. We talk about our mobility solution. PDFs of the product literature is on this website, as well as some end user documentation. There is also a really cool interactive user guide on this website. So a picture of the phone comes up, or an animation of the phone comes up, I should say, and you choose a feature you want to see, and it shows you how to utilize that feature on the phone. All right. The danger of this website with end users is not that they will find out pricing, not that they will see who all is selling the system, because none of that information is on this website. The danger in this website is that they will see every feature available on the system. And you know, it always happens that an end user picks out the most obscure feature and wants you to program it, because even though they don't understand what that feature is. So that's the only drawback to sending them to this website, is they will see every available feature on the system. All right, but there's no pricing information, there is no programming information, there's no information on this website that would hinder your ability to sell the system. All right, we do not list, and also on this website, we do not list all of our people reselling the system. All right, none of that information is on this website. This is purely a product information website. So again, a great resource for you, a great resource for your customers. Then we have the NTAC website, which is purely for you guys. All right. I'm going to assume you all are registered there. If you have not registered there, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Go to www.necntac.com and register. All of our online technical training is there. So we have individual training videos, which I think we're up to about 20 or so on the SL2100. We also have our free certification training. All right. Certification is free. It is not a requirement. All right, but you can go on there and get certified on the system. All right. Sales support, there's our sales support number. All of our account managers, we all cover a ton of states, and I'm going to put our account manager map up here in a minute. So sometimes we are moving targets. You know, we're either on an airplane In my case, as I already pointed out, Southwest Airlines, or we're on the road. So if you cannot get a hold of your account manager, or you need a question answered, a simple question answered really quickly, sales support is available to you at 1-800-365-1928. There is our technical support website, or technical support number, 1-800-852-4632. We ask that you use the tech support number as purely to call in when you're on site for break-fix type of application. If you have a pre-sale technical question or a technical question that's not time sensitive, in other words, you're not on site with the business owner looking over your shoulder trying to get an issue resolved, create an incident report online and send it in. You'll be put in the same queue, and you will get an email answer back from our NTAC agents, or you will get a phone call back if it's a complicated answer. All right? So, voice over IP, is everybody in? We're going to ask you to migrate from being an interconnect to an integrator. So become IT savvy. If you don't want to become IT savvy, hire somebody who's IT savvy. If you don't want to hire somebody who's IT savvy, partner up with an IT integrator, because that's going to be the way you're going to develop new system sales. All right? Sell the value. Don't wait for the customer to ask. All right? If they ask you for a particular feature, it's too late. Somebody else has sold them on the feature. All right? Incorporate leasing with every quote. That's how you can get down to your low monthly cost. And like I said, then it becomes a capital expense versus an operating expense. All right? And lastly, embrace the technology. All right? There's our account manager map with all of our contact information. Again, I will be sending this information out to you all afterwards. So you will have a copy of this. All right? So with that, I'll open it up for questions. Do you have any questions about what we talked about? I see a few people dropped off because they anticipated I was coming to the end. Any questions about what we talked about? Questions going once? Twice? All right. If there's no questions, I will let you guys go. I appreciate you taking the time to attend this morning. I hope this was helpful for you. And like I say, in the next day or two, be on the lookout for a follow-up email from either myself or sales support with links to the recording as well as a copy of this presentation for you. All right? Thank you, everybody. Go out and have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining. Take care.